Hey, welcome to the Real Estate Growth Network podcast. Chase, what are we talking about today?
So we're talking about the $1 million database, and this episode is the light version. So we're getting people introduced to a $1 million database. And I think it's important for agents to understand that even if you have no intention of ever building a $1 million database, you can implement these systems in any database you have for whatever your goals actually are, Brent.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite topics because, as you and I both know, this is one of the most difficult things and a massive investment that we had to make over our long real estate careers to figure out. And it's one of my favorites because we just kind of crack the code for you and help you understand not only the definitions, but also just the steps you should take in order to build a $1 million database.
Yeah, and I want to double down on the massive investment. It's not just money, it's also time. Even to this day in our real estate business, we are constantly making tweaks. And when you take the decades that we've been in business and we've been tweaking things, sometimes 4 or 5 times a month, and I would say still to this day, we make multiple tweaks per year. That's how you get here. It's not just writing checks. It's also, figuring out what does and probably even more importantly, Brent, what does not work.
Yeah, and for anybody out there thinking, well, AI is coming. Well, AI doesn't get the nuance. It doesn't get the day-to-day stuff that we had to figure out the hard way. So think about it this way. This is actually a benefit to know with AI coming because it will, as AI gets better and more powerful and can help you more, you can actually build your input properly to have AI support you with a true $1 million database. So,
Yeah,
guys,
great
we
point.
hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. And if you want more, you can go to our website, realestategrowth.network, and find the full version of the $1 million database class.
Enjoy. And here is a real estate titan that is pushing the limits on the status quo.
And it took years and years of failing to get where I am today.
You're like, whoa, or you actually get the most clarity.
That was kind of one of those pivotal moments when I started building a business.
I spent a lot of time becoming an expert salesperson.
All right. So this is the $1 million database framework overview. We're going to jam in as much as we possibly can, but just as a reminder, you guys will have the full manual. So there we go. All right. So let's start with this, Chase. This is one of my favorite conversations to have, but the reality that most agents miss is we all know that people tend to buy between 7 and 10 years. I think most agents in the room would understand and know that. But here's the key piece that most agents miss. And that's that there's 10 years of them not wanting to buy a house. And then there's a 10-week period between when they think about it or decide that they want to do it and they actually close on it. And there are companies like Zillow, Realtor.com, these big portals. What are they doing, Chase? What are they competing for?
Well, they have a lot of money, so they're competing in that 10-week zone, right?
Yeah, so they spend all of their money to figure out when people are in that 10-week zone. And then guess what? They want to sell it back to you. So they find that person and then they sell that captured attention back to you and say, hey, here's someone in a 10-week zone. Go sell them real estate and pay us when you're done. So this is the shift that most agents need to understand that they have to make. They have to figure out how to be the person in the 10-week period. So you're not competing for 10 years. You're actually competing to be chosen in the 10-week window. So I want that to sink in for you guys. You have to compete in a way that gets you chosen in that 10-week period. And that's what the $1 million database structure does if done properly. So the only question that matters is, are you the person that your database is going to choose in that 10-week window? Or unfortunately, most agents fall prey to the second one. They're invisible. They're nowhere to be found when the decision happens. And that's all because of lack of consistency and lack of frequency and and lack of intention with how they're following up with their people. So here's what most agents lose, or here's why most agents lose. They're too late. So maybe they find out that someone wanted to buy or wants to buy, but they find out mid-process or even after they've closed. They're too random, so they don't follow up with any consistency, any thought. And then if they are following up, they're way too inconsistent. And the problem with inconsistency is then you don't build trust. And trust is built in the consistency. Chase, you talk about it all the time, the genuine agent model. One thing that I think people miss in this business is that they fail to tell people that they're in real estate, or they fail to have real estate conversation. And here's what I want you guys all to ask yourself. Are you genuine? Chase, when you ask people if they're genuine, what do they tell you?
Of course.
They say, I'm genuine. Okay, great. And then we ask them the follow-up question, like, how many people in your database? And they say 100. And the follow-up to that is, how many of those 100 are you following up with? What do people normally say, Chase?
All of them. Yeah.
All of them. Likely not very consistent, but they say all of them. And then the best question is, how many of these people would you actually be calling or following up with if you weren't in real estate? And then what do they say, Chase?
Yeah, like none of them, or like a handful.
Yeah, like a handful, like 5 or 10. Okay, so let's say 5. That means there's 95 people that they're quote unquote following up with, and they're not having real estate conversations. And yet they would never call these people if they weren't in real estate.
Yeah, and just for clarity, Brent, I think something that you're saying is they're calling them, but they don't have a strategy to make real estate the call because they're afraid of feeling salesy or whatever the case.
That's 100% right. And the challenge with that is, would you rather risk sounding salesy, which by the way, there's ways to do it. You never sound salesy. Would you rather risk that and, maybe lose 5 of those people? Now you're only following up with 95, but you're having real estate conversations? Or would you rather just stand on the sideline and never, look like you're salesy, right? And then you're talking to 100 people, but you're not doing it in a way that's genuine. All right. So here's the thing. The opportunity lies for you guys in showing up consistently, being present, being relevant. How do you become relevant? Which means you need to deliver value. We call those gold bars in this framework. And then you need to be consistent. And there's actually power in frequency. I'm going to talk about it in a second. But before we go into frequency and all of that kind of stuff, let's just talk through some numbers. And I want you guys, if you're able to, if you're not driving and you have a pen handy and a paper, I want to do some math with you guys. Okay. So first of all, Met database. Those are people that you would say know, like, and trust you, or at least know and like you, and you could build trust. How many people do you have in that right now? And by the way, a little wake-up call. If you don't know, that's a problem. And that's okay if you don't know, but you should figure it out. So how many people do you have in your Met database right now? Then the next question is, how many did business in the last 12 months, either directly or through referral? And again, if you don't know the answer, this is where clarity starts to, if you don't have clarity here, then it's really hard to build a consistent replicatable business, because it all boils down to the math. Meaning, if you know how the system works and you know how many people you need in that system to get the result you want, it always is just a math problem. Now we say, how many did business in the last 12 months? Then we divide how many people did business with you that were a Met, directly or indirectly, into how many people you have in your Met. So an example of what that might look like is, I have 100 people that know, like, and trust me in my database, or on a spreadsheet, or in my phone, or wherever you have them. And 3 people did business with you, directly or indirectly. That means that's a 3% conversion rate of your quote unquote Met database. Now we want to reverse engineer it and say, what's your goal for next year? So let's say it's 15. Say your goal is 15. Well, if you had to hit your goal through database alone, how many people would you need to add? Well, that would actually mean that if 15 is 3% of something, how big would that database have to be at a 3% conversion rate for you to hit your goal? And this is a clarity question, because the reality is you don't need that big of a database. You don't need a database that's 500 people big to close 15 transactions. But your conversion rate is likely low. If you do go in and do the math, it's likely low because you're not following a system. You're not following something that's designed to convert at the proper percentage. And then here's the best part. Figure out the gap of how many units it takes to actually make $1 million, and how big your database needs to be for that. And here's the beauty of all of it. If you implement a system that works, you can get a 10 to 15% return on that system. So we're going from previous math, 3% conversion. That's a pretty large database that you need to have of people that know, like, and trust you in order to net $1 million. But if you can net 10 to 15% out of your Mets through a good system, then that greatly reduces the size that you need in order to make that possible. Chase, what am I leaving out?
Well, I think the two things that I heard there are like I have two ways to attack this. I can grow my database or I can get more effective with my database, right?
That's
But
right.
you can't change anything strategically unless you know where you're at. So you're setting the foundation for us here.
Love it. Yeah, that's exactly right. Knowing where you're at's half the battle. Once you know where you're at, then you have to choose what path do you want. Do you want to just keep a low conversion rate and just increase that number of people that you need to meet, put in your system? Or do you want to have a really well-defined system that is designed to yield the biggest result out of the smallest amount of people? That's the two choices. So here's an example of what a conversion would look like if you had 100 people and we call it, now we're converting to the word cap, by the way, from Met to cap. And I'll explain what cap is here in a second. But in your cap, if you had 100 people at 5%, that'd be 5 deals. At 10%, 10 deals, and 15%, 15 deals. So you can do the math pretty easily. Like if you have a goal of doing 30, then you know you only need 100 people in your cap if you're running the right system. All right. So here's the framework of the $1 Million Database. It's build it, feed it, grow it. And so today we're going to dive a little bit deep into the build it aspect, just so I can give you guys some context. And then I'm going to briefly go over feed it and grow it. And then we're going to end with a couple of questions and just a reminder that you guys can get this full database manual in the Momentum group. All right, so here's the thing. I'm going to state the obvious. You need to get your contacts into a system, into a database management system. And here's also the reality, the best CRM in the world. Are you guys ready? Write this down because I'm going to give you the best one. I see people asking on social media all the time, what's the best one? I'm going to give it to you. It's the one you use, period. If you go get a CRM, you can build it to do very simple things. And so long as you use it, it's the best CRM in the world. If you don't use it, then there's not a CRM out there in the world that will save you or help your business. So here's the number one rule with Build It. If they are not in your CRM, they do not exist. The CRM is what we call the real world. So if you're communicating with people through social media, for example, your number one goal is to get them into the real world, which is to get their contact information and put them into your CRM so the system can help you manage it. And the reason why that's so important, guys, that I want you to think about with the CRM is if you don't have help through a CRM, then you just don't have the bandwidth to manage that many relationships. And a little spoiler here, AI is coming in hot, and AI is eventually going to help inside of CRM. So the more built out and robust and structured you can have your CRM, the better AI will be able to benefit you in the future. Because the one thing AI will never be able to replace is empathy, presence, relationship, understanding, collaboration. It's never going to replace those things. But what it will do is help you do more with the relationships. But if you don't have your CRM built out, then you might miss the wave. You might miss the opportunity that AI will bring. All right, so now we want to structure it. So this is where I'm just going to go over a 10,000 foot overview of what structuring it actually means. So first I want to describe the difference when I say stage and when I say tag. Now in your CRM, you can call it something different, but I want to just tell you what they mean as I'm saying them. So you guys have a basis of what I mean when I say stage and a basis when I say tag. Stage is when are they going to move? This determines the speed and frequency of your follow-up cadence for someone who is in a transacting timeline. So now 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60, and so on. Tag is how you treat them. So tag is your relationship with them. And what that will do is if they're not in a buying or transacting timeline, it will determine how much mind share that person gets of yours. Because Chase, if you have leads in a database and you don't prioritize them with who you should follow up with, and every lead is the same importance, then what does that actually mean?
Well, if all your leads are important, then none of them are, or if none of them are important, then all of them are. Like there's no. The reality is that not all leads are created equal. So some need attention today. You started with the 10-week period. Who's in the 10-week period?
Yeah.
Right? Like they probably need more phone calls than the person who's in the, 7 years out. But that's where
exactly
stages
right.
come in, right? and
Yep.
tax.
And then being able to identify relationships. There are going to be people that are just more beneficial to your business than others. They're going to get a different level of attention from you. They should, because this end of the day is a business. All right. So here's stages, an example. We have zero, we have now. Now is you follow up with them daily. You should be talking to these people every single day if they're transacting now. If they're looking to buy a house or looking to list their property, you should find a reason to talk to them every day. And let me give you an example. Someone, you go on a listing appointment and they say, oh, okay, we're going to interview a few other people. We'll let you know in 3 days. Well, you better find a reason to follow up with them the day you leave the appointment, the day after, and the day they decide. You better find a reason to follow up with them. Hey, I was just doing more research on your house. County records say this. This is what I showed. Just wanted to double check with you guys. Whatever, right? Like, you need to find a reason to touch them every single day. 0 to 30, 30 to 60, or 30 to 90, 90 to 6 months, and you can see the cadence change. You're following up with them less. And this is all going to make sense in a second when I get to filters. Then we move to the CAP system. So here's how we define CAP. First of all, CAP stands for Client Appreciation Program, but really it can just be the program that nurtures and fosters relationship with people that have asked or given permission to follow up with. So if you do give what we call the database qualifying script, if you give that to someone, they say, yeah, I would like you to follow up with me as it pertains to real estate. Well, then you move them into the CAP. And so CAP A, these are your all-stars, people. They've done multiple transactions. They've referred multiple transactions, or they are strong or natural networkers. They're the person who just knows everybody, who is the guy that's like, oh yeah, I got a guy for that. You want those people and you want to put a ton of attention into them. If you become their person, then they become a strong source of business for you. So that is your CAP A. Your CAP B have done business with you. That's what B stands for, business. They've done one piece of, they've bought or sold one house or referred. Then you go to CAP C. That means coachable. That means that you could, in essence, coach them into using you or referring you. Those are the people that have said, yes, follow up with me as it pertains to real estate, and they don't fall in the other two categories. Those are CAP C. And then CAP D just stands for database. These are just people that have not said, yes, follow up with me. You met them at an open house. You got their name, their phone number, their email, and then they never answered your call again. You put them in CAP D. We don't put them in the garbage. We put them in CAP D. The reason why is D, you're not following up with your D. You're not calling your D unless you have a contact day where you want to make 100 contacts. But your D, you're not calling. You just put them in the system, let the system do the work, and let it find hand raises. Let it find people who want to take a real estate review. Let it find people who say they want a CMA on their property. Like, let the system do the work. Once they raise their hand, then you can determine, are you going to put them in an A, B, or C category based on the conversation you have with them. And by the way, guys, the manual that you have access to in the Momentum group has all of this spelt out in great details, 42 pages of full content. So now the system runs, but we need a system to run for us, not us having to go in and figure out who should I be calling today. This is where filters come in. So a filter shows you who needs your attention today. And so in certain CRMs, most CRMs, they allow you to create a filter based on a set of rules that will show you a list. So a filter based on a set of rules that will show you a list. And here's the goal. You pull that list up every single day and you work it. So here's an example. If there's stages now, so if you staged them now and there's been no contact in 1 day, that's a filter rule, then they would show up in your transacting now list on your dashboard. So you click on that list, and if there's any name on that list, that's someone that needs to be followed up with right now. That's a filter. This eliminates the need for setting reminders and all of that. The only time we set a reminder in a CRM is if someone says, call me at 5 p.m. Set a reminder. Otherwise, you let the system filters work for you. That way, no lead slips through the crack, no relationship goes untouched. Then we have here's an example of a CAP filter. So no contact in the last 90 days. So our CAP A's, we talk to them every 90 days. So if the filter rule would say has a tag CAP A and has not had a contact in the last 90 days. That's the rule. That then falls into a list on your dashboard, a follow-up list. And so anybody that shows up in that list, has not had any contact in the last 90 days. Very easy to work through lists that show you who hasn't had a touch versus task lists that are indefinitely frustrating. All right. So filters, they replace memory. The old way was you either had to guess who to call or you had to set reminders. So if you had a conversation with someone and you forgot to set a reminder and you leave that lead, that would fall through the cracks. That person would never get followed up with again. And we call those hostage leads really because they get stuck in your CRM and no one knows about them. They're invisible. The new way is your CRM just based on rules tells you who you should follow up with today. So here's your daily system. It's simple. Start with calling all your buyer timeline filters and then end with calling your cap filters. That's it. If you do that alone and you have a full system built for your entire database, this is the only work you need to put in to know that you did your job for the day. Besides calling lead generating, besides calling new leads, for sale by owners, expireds, things of that nature. All right. So feed it. Consistent touches that create trust. I want you guys, here's the thing. I'm not going to go deep into this, but here's what I'm going to tell you is today with social media, today with the amount of information being hurled at people, the old style doesn't work anymore. And the old style is, everybody's heard it. Most people have heard it if you've been in real estate long enough. The 33 touch program. You touch your people 33 times a year. No, that's not the reality anymore. The reality is you need to be able to curate and touch up to 118 times per year, depending on the lead source or depending on the tag. And so because it takes so much more today to grab and maintain their attention than it did 5 years ago. And a part of that 118 touch can be social media. We dive into that in the manual. It could be weekly emails. We dive into all of it in the manual, but a curated high value, high frequency is going to get you much further than the old school 33 touch, one size fits all. It doesn't work anymore. And I mean, we use it. We know that 33 touches just doesn't cut it anymore. And then you need people coming in weekly. So you need to grow it. You need to add people and continue to classify them or categorize them. And so here's the reality with Grow. Your future income is your current database growth. So if you don't have a goal set around, hey, I'm going to add 1, 2, 5, 10 people a week to my system, then your business can get stagnant. Your future growth or your future income can get hurt. And by the way, if you're growing it, the cool thing is if we see a market downturn, you're going to be more likely to survive because it's going to take more people that that know, like, and trust you to transact fewer transactions. And so the more you can grow it and put it into the system to work for you, the better off you'll be. All right. So I want to bring it all the way back to the 10 weeks. If you're not talking to your people, running filters and staying visible, chances are Zillow is going to capture your person. Chances are a company like I run is going to grab your person's attention. The person that is running and gunning for the attention during the 10-week period is going to win. So ask yourself, what are you doing to ensure that you are going to be the person they choose when that 10 weeks shows up? And here's why we know the system works, guys. This goes all the way back to when I had you do the math. And Chase and I were talking about really, it's just the problems in the math. There's only two choices, but you also need to have clarity on what it is that you actually have. We know the math works. And here's how we know. Right now, our business, we have a large business and we have a conversion rate in our cap of over 10%. And that's a good percentage. Here's how we know, because people transact on average every 10 years. If you have 100 people, if they're transacting every 10 years out of that 100 people, you're only going to convert 10. So that's a 10% conversion rate just naturally. And so knowing that we're getting in front of enough people and staying relevant enough to capture over a 10% conversion through referral and direct means that the system works. And if you follow the build it, feed it, grow it system, then it'll work for you too. All right. So here's a simple action plan, guys. You can add 5 people every week. If you assign stages, assign tags, the filters will work for you. So if this was your goal, if you said, hey, I'm just going to go out and find 5 people and put them in every single week. If you have a low database number now, this is a process for you to have a database of value, an actual business asset by the end of the year.
Yeah, even if you only worked 40 weeks, Brent, that's 200 people.
Exactly.
So, and you give yourself a year to put them through your system and start to get conversion. I mean, that could be even at 5%, that's 10 additional transactions transactions. So
yeah, well, and here's the reality: adding people into a system that you build, a system that works, it's truly one of the most valuable assets that you can own as a real estate agent. There's not a lot in this business that you can own that's an asset, but let me tell you that those relationships and that attention is an asset.
Well, people put way too much value on investing in real estate for passive income and way too little value in the passive income side of the business and real estate, which is your database.
100%. And your database can be it can yield a lot of results to the point where, some people yield such good results that they can bring in leverage and have people work the business for them. And, they can buy their time back with that asset. So, all right, guys, just as a reminder, and we're going to put the link in the chat, but the full $1 Million Database Manual, it's free for anybody that's in Momentum. So, if you want to become a founding member subscriptions are free for a year right now through the end of March. So if you're interested in getting the manual and becoming a part of the Momentum group, which is daily growth every day, weekly coaching, and all kinds of extras, then click the link and register. And we'll also put the link in the YouTube chat for anybody who wants to become a founding member of Momentum. All right, Chase, we are...
I can't believe you made it.
I know, man. It was funny. I've had to put quite a bit of time in to really bake it down, guys, because there is so much information in the actual manual. In fact, while you guys are looking real quick, let me just show you something, and then we'll cut you loose. Before you leave, though, I want to show you this. This is the $1 Million Database workbook, and you can see how much instruction and information is in this. I mean, it's no joke. This thing will walk you through step by step. Number one, how to know what to do, but then how to execute and actually do it. I mean, it gives you scripts, what to say, how to say it, when to say it. It gives you everything. So be sure to go into our group and download the $1 Million Database manual so you can execute it on your own. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Real Estate Growth Network podcast, where we dig into real estate topics.
And we put these out every single week, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
See you later.